Welcome to another episode of the Tower 26B Racer Podcast. I'm Jim Linsky here with Coach Gerry Rodriguez. Coach, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Jim?
Oh, I'm outstanding. I'm warmed up. The pipes are warm. Whoa, hang on a second. What happened there?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I gotta close out my Facebook. We're live on Facebook right now. There you are. We're replaying it. Yeah.
Whoa, hang on a second. What happened there?
What's going on? We're having technical difficulty. Do you hear that right now, Jer?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Jim, you just want to hear yourself.
Facebook
more.
was open. I just want to keep hear myself over and over and over again. So, hey, Talansky, you're here too. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great now that we don't hear you talking 3 times.
How could you not love to hear me talk 3 times? That's all I do. I just sit in my garage and listen to myself all day long. Also with us, Emily Cox. Coach Emily, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah. You warmed up after our 2 p.m. call? Are you ready to rock?
Yep. The pipes are, it's like doing our, toy boat.
So we're live on Facebook. Remember, guys, if you guys have questions, we're going to have some video content throughout this episode. So if you have questions, you want to tune in, pay attention to that video. I'm going to upload this to YouTube after the fact. So if you're listening to this and you want to see what we're talking about, follow along on YouTube after the fact. But I will have the recording up on YouTube. So, Jared, where's your head at right now? How you feeling? How you feeling about our last episode? Where are we at in the season-long progression? What's going on in the Tower 26 world?
Well, we're getting ready, moving out of the foundation phase, right? And we've been in our sort of sharpening phase and getting athletes ready to swim pretty darn fast for a 1K and 100 is our retesting time, right? And
Yep.
Once we wrap that up, we're right into it's perfect timing because the ocean's warming up a bit. I checked yesterday, we're 59, and once for us, the magic number is 60. Once we hit 60 degrees and we hold that for about a week, then we start our open water workouts, which rolls right into our next phase, which is our open water skill building. So that's why the timing of our season runs the way we do it. With each phase starting at particular times, it works right into water temps warming up, and also the bulk of the racing season, right? June, July, August, September.
Which is what we talked about last episode, our sharpening phase, open water skill building phase, the workouts that accompany those phases on coaching.tower26.com. But real quick, getting back to something you just brought up, why do you say 60 degrees is the temperature that we want to start getting in the pool? Why isn't it anything lower?
You mean in the ocean?
In the ocean.
In open water, yeah. For me, Jim, as the coach, the head of Tower 26, I have a responsibility to every athlete, their families, their kids, their brothers or sisters, husbands, wives. And for me, it's a safety issue. Athletes, triathletes in particular, tend to be super lean, endurance athletes. Colder water has a much more challenging effect, even though we're in wetsuits. And I want to make sure that we're safe. And I'm not a proponent of races in cold water. In fact, if I had my way, I would never have a triathlon in waters in the low 50s or even mid 50s, or any race. I just think it's not healthy. So too many risks.
Well said. Well said.
We've seen that over the years.
And also, I think, people lose sight that it's a long season. Think, I got to get in the open water right now. And it's March. It's only May. When I lived in Chicago, we didn't even think about racing until July because that's when the weather started to warm up. Emily, you know what I'm talking about. We get so jaded now because there's races year round. You think, I got to get in February. I got to get ready for Oceanside. Get in open water in February and it's 45 degrees in the water. You got to be smart. Like you said, safety first. Make sure that it's in the right temperature. We're not bringing that core temperature down too low. And everybody stays safe and healthy so we can live to fight another day.
Right. And triathlon, it's it's not it's extreme in its endurance, but it's not built out the history of it to be this this event that you go through these super extreme temperature changes. I mean, I recall one year when you were in the beginning budding years of the sport of your sporting career in triathlon. I think you did a race was it in Coeur d'Alene or where was it? Where I think I saw a bunch of athletes after the swim, they decided to hop on their bike in their wetsuit because it was so freaking cold, right?
Boise, Idaho. Yeah.
Okay. So
that's a funny race because we were sitting in the water, right? And they decided to shorten. So they send the pros out and it was a deep water start. So they send us out. We're sitting at the start line, and they decide to shorten the bike course because it was so cold, but they'd already put us in the water. So we're in the water waiting, and there's actually snow flurries coming down as we're waiting. And then they keep delaying us. They say, oh, we have to change the aid stations, so we're going to delay it another 5 minutes. Yet they kept us out in the water. They were changing the aid stations, shortening the bike for our safety, yet they had us 30, 40 guys in the water just waiting in the snow, freezing took us off. And then finally, after 15, 20 minutes of waiting while they changed the aid stations for safety, they let us go. And that might have been the coldest I've ever been in my life, let alone in a race.
Right. Well, I think we've progressed, advanced since then. I believe more events are now either cutting a swim or trimming the distance for safety purposes. So as the coach, guy who runs Tower 26, I want to make sure that with our athletes, because, once we get started, those sessions build up pretty quickly. There's a couple hundred people showing up in the morning on Wednesday before work. And I want to make sure that John and or Jenny goes home to their wives or husbands or children or parents.
And we do have several Johns and Jennies swimming for us. So
That
very
is
literal
correct.
in that comment. But let's get to Talansky. Let's get him involved, get him warmed up. Talansky, you've raced across the world, all months, all seasons. What's the coldest you've ever been in a cycling race?
Oh man. Oh, the coldest in a bike race.
While you're thinking about that, let me tell you about Boise. When I got on
Okay.
the run, I swear I put on my shoes and I kept thinking that I had a rock in my shoe, but it was my toe was so frozen underneath my foot and I couldn't feel it. I took my shoe off probably 3 or 4 times. Like, there's got to be a rock in this shoe. And it was my toe was frozen and curled under the rest of my foot. Every time I ran, I was just pounding down and didn't even realize it. Talansky, go.
I think it was, I've been cold, very cold a lot of times. It's why my hands don't work very well in cold weather now. And they freeze instantly when I go to cross country ski because I've had like mild frostbite so many times in them. But it would have had to be it was actually in País Vasco, which is a race in the northwest of Spain. And typically like it's rainy there and stuff, but this specific year, it got so cold so quickly. And I went from being near the front of the race and it was the same thing, like these little snow flurries. And I had all the clothes from the car, everything I could have on. And it didn't matter. I was sitting there like shaking on the bike, but there was a time trial I wanted to do the next day. So I kept riding, and every team director until mine got there, they went by me. They were like, you okay? You want to get in? It's maybe you should stop. But it's hard to pick one because honestly, that exact same scenario happened like almost every year at Paris-Nice. And it was, bike racing is, they don't care unless it's literally the road's frozen over. You race, and I'm from Miami, Florida, man. I don't do the cold. So it was always hard on me.
That's why they call you Mr. Worldwide. All right, well, that's some interesting stuff. But there's a few topics we want to cover on this podcast. We want to talk about some new wearable technology Gerry's seeing in the swim world. We want to talk about decisions, and a lot of athletes are making coaching decisions now. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about the big news in triathlon last week, the doping that went on with an elite athlete, a winner of the PTO. What did he win? PTO Dallas last year, Colin Chartier. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first off, I want to talk about the countries that we always talk about the top countries in our downloads and the countries we give them shout outs. But Gerry, is it okay if I talk about a couple countries I'm disappointed in that aren't downloading the way they should be? And what we're going to do, I think what we need to do is get some athletes or some coaches or some knowledgeable individuals or just somebody from these countries to come on and kind of spread the word in these areas. Because you look at a country like France, they're number 12. France, this triathlon is huge in France. Christophe built our damn website, and France should be in the top 5.
Have they slid down? Were they ever in the top 10?
I don't think so. I think we need to promote France a little bit.
Yep.
New Zealand's number 8. New Zealand's got how many triathlons? Triathletes everywhere. Terenzo Bozzoni. What happened to that guy? Where is he? We gotta get Terenzo on here. Spread in New Zealand, number 8. These countries should be vying for the top 5, and they're down the list quite a ways.
How are we doing on 2, 3, and 4?
2, 3, and 4 numbers? I don't know off the top of my head.
Are we still with Canada and
Canada, UK, Australia is number 5. Okay. So yeah, those countries are competing, but Australia, I think 5's good, but you could be 3. New Zealand, let's move it up. France. I just had lunch with Peter, our Philippine athlete. He's Czech, but he lives in the Philippines. Philippines is way down the list. So we have athletes in all corners of the earth. Let's pick up the downloads, guys. Come on, pick up downloads in these countries. Are you with me?
Good stuff.
We spread
Yes.
knowledge across the world. Let's get into what our main topics of this. Gerry, you've been seeing some interesting technology across the board here in the swim realm. What have you been seeing?
Well, interestingly, I've been asked some questions and I hadn't seen the technology or hadn't used any of it. So what I want is to buy some time from you and come back in another episode with Coach Jack, possibly Emily, and go over in a little bit more depth. But I did take a look at two things that were sent to me, and then I, of course, like anything else, the moment you look at something online, it starts showing up in your social media feed, right? It's sort of, so all of a sudden I started seeing ads for these things, and these are sensors that generally give you some feedback, what you're doing. Neither of them were, and I didn't write the names down because I want to be much more detailed when we do this in further detail in a future episode, but I wanted to give some specific comments to start off. They weren't real-time feedback, so you actually had to exit the pool and then go log into the app and to get feedback. So I had an issue with that. Similar to or dissimilar to like the Form goggle where you get instantaneous feedback, right? That's the goggle with the readout where you can see while you're swimming. So there's a good piece of technology. These two things they were developed by swimmers, and they have there's some good data in it, and especially data related to the application of force, how much one hand is maybe creating more force than another, and so on. And I looked at these and I tried to think through, okay, I'm thinking through the lens of coach, but now I have to think through the lens of the user, and then also a coach that's coaching the user, okay? And in our realm of how we rank coaching triathlon swimming, force and the application of force comes in third, right? We start with what's our foundation? Number one, body tautness. Then we go into alignment. So body tautness is structure, the foundation of your frame, how you hold yourself in the water, being able to talk to the appropriate muscles so that you're in proper position. Alignment is secondary, the place where the most errors occur in swimming. And then finally, there's propulsion. And propulsion would relate to application of force, the direction of that application, and those types of things. So for triathletes in general, if you're starting to get data feedback on just force, that is, to me, down the line of importance for you, unless you're swimming, or I'll give a stab at a number, in the low 50 minutes for an Ironman, 25 minutes for a half Ironman. So we're looking at the 1%ers, right? That group could start looking at force, but the others, it's not a metric that would have the most value to you at this moment. So I'm not yet encouraged by these two pieces of technology, but I wanted to answer the question because a few people asked it. So it seems like there's more promotion being done of these technologies. I don't know if they're now being more readily made available, whatever it may be, but I'm going to look into it and come back with more detail for everyone.
Well, that's a good point, because think about cycling, right? If you just slam down on the pedals to land ski, you could put out some huge watts, but what is that really telling you? It's not telling you how efficient your pedal stroke is, or how much power you're getting, how much stability you have on the saddle. You're just slamming down on the pedals and putting out as many watts as you can, which is extremely inefficient. And what you're saying, Gerry, it's kind of the same thing. It's like you can pull as hard as you can all day long, but if your tautness isn't there, your alignment isn't there, that pulling is not going to do anything for you.
Right, and we would see that. I mean, an example of that would be a very, very strong person in the weight room, a bodybuilder, a weightlifter, whatever it may be, that may be able to apply lots of force, but they still swim very slowly. So it's a critical component, and its value, its return, the yield of that data is super high for elite athletes, elite swimmers. It's not as valuable for the slower than 52, 55-minute Ironman athlete, to 27, 28-minute half Ironman, which is a very, very fast time, right? I mean, there's only a handful of athletes, pros and super elite age groupers, can swim that fast. So there are other components that will yield a greater feedback benefit than these two particular devices that I saw.
So
But I didn't
talking
test
about
them, so I want to be very fair. I didn't test them, and I don't want to give the name out until I test them.
So we know Jack will come on and he'll give
Yes.
his full detailed analysis of that. So it's interesting. If you have any thoughts on that, guys, write in the Facebook Messenger, ask us questions, jim@tower26.com, and then we'll get it on the next episode where we do speak about these devices. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, so let's back up to priority, right? The priority is to make sure, but when you think of swimming, and we do the same thing in riding, as Andrew would tell you, and Jim, you would know, obviously, in running, we start with, and especially more so for swimming, you start with how do you reduce drag? That's the most important thing for swimming, because you have a high density medium to get yourself through. So having proper structure of your body in the water is single-handedly the most important thing to start with, because you can apply all the force in the world, but if you don't have proper body structure in the water, and you're not, the word in swimming is streamlined, right? Then you have a tremendous amount of frontal resistance. So that position that the body sits in the water is paramount to anything else. That's first. So those are the quantitative pieces of data that you want to get feedback upon. Then the next thing you want feedback upon would be any sort of alignment issues, things that are making your body misalign. That's the next most important thing. So in this coach's opinion, in the ranking of how you should look for feedback, these two devices I looked at wouldn't come into my ranking for this audience. So let's keep it really specific. If I were invited on a podcast to talk to Olympic athletes in swimming, completely different answer, right?
Well, let's talk to Emily. I mean, Division I, she swam at Division I, University of Michigan. Was there any type of device that you used that you said, hey, this is really beneficial in showing me my frontal drag or showing me my propulsion or whatever? Is there anything that you used at the Division I swim level that you could say, hey, this was really beneficial and I learned a lot from it? Or were you just like, go swim 50,000 yards a week and see you later?
Well, I think I was, mid 90s when I was at Michigan. So a long time ago, I think we were limited on the technology. I remember testing a system where the coach could you had something in your ear and the coach could talk to you while you were swimming. And we did some testing on that, but most of ours was very simple. The coach looking at you or videotaping and then looking at the videotape, then getting back in the pool. That was kind of what we did. Some of our top level athletes got to go in the flume in Colorado Springs. So there was a bit of, that's a little bit fancier of a device, but it was very much the coach just looking at you. And we all swam so much. I think we had a really good feeling of the water and what the drag was. So we didn't have any sensors like form goggles or anything way back then.
And Jim, I wanted to address this and to Emily's point. We didn't have any of this stuff up until recently, very recent, in the last decade or less, right? And swimmers today, if we took out the push-offs with all the underwater butterfly kicking that's going on, swimmers today are not a whole lot faster than they were 20, 30, or even 40 years ago. The world record in the 1500 meter freestyle was 15:02 in 1976 at the Olympic Games, and they're going 14:30 today. So they're swimming, and there's just a couple of athletes that barely touch that level. So you're swimming 30 seconds faster, which half of that is being made up in better start and better turns during the race. So they're basically swimming 1 second per 100 meters faster than they were 40 something years ago. So the technology has a place, and the message I want to get across to triathletes love devices, okay, and we like to go get the fanciest and the newest piece of technology out there to use it. And I'm just saying at the moment, hold off for a minute. Let's get a good review on this, and because I'm uncertain these are the best pieces. This is where your money's best spent.
Got it. Andrew, when you got into cycling, when you first started, did you have power meters?
Power meters existed. I did not have a power meter. They were pretty expensive at the time. And I did the majority of my training for those first few years with cadence, and I don't even think I wore a heart rate monitor. And I think there was a lot of value in that, because when I did get a power meter, ultimately, just like we do in the pool with the feedback we get when we finish 100 or a 50 and we look at the clock, I was able to pair a feeling with the equivalent power. I mean, I see it all the time in cycling. There are variations, even power meter to power meter in the same brand, from a trainer to a power meter. There are power meters that still read a little bit inaccurately, but consistent to themselves. And at the end of the day, at the elite level, the athletes know what they're doing. They know what hard is. They know what 90% is. They know what 100% is. And I mean, yeah, I definitely see that. I think I was actually really well served by not having access to a power meter those first few years, because I learned to associate an effort with a feeling and then later paired that to a number rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and you get athletes now that are just slaves of the power meter, and
Oh.
they forget that exact thing. Like, you have to know how these efforts feel, and you have to be totally in tune with that effort as you're executing it, as opposed to what that number's saying. Because sometimes that number doesn't tell you what you want to see, what you want. And then you go down this downward spiral, and you end up maybe dropping out of a race, whereas you could have had a great day, but just because that power meter told you what you didn't want to see, it got into that mind, and you let things go to waste.
It's I'm not very old, but I guess I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon in certain ways. Like, I would, I hate the wearables. Or hate's a strong word. I strongly dislike all of these things that people use now to tell them how they're feeling. And for the athletes I have who do use those things, I'm like, hey, you want to do it? That's great. But like, don't look at it till later. It's not going to change it. Like, let's look at it later. Don't wake up and look at that number and let that number tell you how your day is going to go, right? Like the Whoop or anything else. Sure, it's good in context, but I think what you said, they become slaves to the data or what the number is telling them rather than checking in. And they might have had a great day, but the number says, you're not feeling good today. And it's not positive. The same applies. I require every bike only athlete I have. There's a specific workout where they have to go do 3 climbing efforts, and it's basically a practice in changing gears. They're not allowed to look at the data, and they progress the effort, and they do it repeatedly throughout the season. And the requirement, or why I require them to do that, is to learn to pair a feeling with an effort, because otherwise they're just staring. If those that have power meters, which is pretty much everybody now, they stare at that data and they let that tell them how they feel on a climb. And I like to later, I look at the file and we go through it and I say, look, this is, how did you feel on this one? How was the second one? How was the third one, which is the hardest? And it's interesting, over time, they're typically pretty off. Like, the efforts are really close together the first time, even though it's supposed to be like easy, medium, hard. And then over time, after 6 months or 8 months, there's like a solid gear change and differentiation between those 3 efforts. And it usually serves them well in racing, because at the end of the day, they need to know where their limit is without the number telling them where the limit is.
Yeah. And Gerry, I mean, how many times do we have a new swimmer come to the pool and say, oh, I only have 1 gear, right? That's exactly what Andrew's saying on the bike. Is what we're seeing at the pool is they don't have 1 gear. They got to learn what easy is, what moderate is, what fast is within their ability levels.
Yeah, correct. And it's to your point, the gear, it's usually 2 gears on and off, right? And for some, they would come in and their warm-up effort, and if you time them, their warm-up speed is the same as their main set speed.
We were just talking to him, Cody.
Okay, yeah, Cody might be an
Cody.
example,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking of someone who just started up with us about 2 months ago, and he thought he could swim a minute for 100 yards. And when I looked at him in warm up, I don't think it's possible. And then I put him in an appropriate lane that I thought was where he belonged, based on what he was telling me. And then ultimately we moved him to the slowest lane in our workout group. So there's complete lack of awareness as to output, effort.
Well, you learn real quick. You learn real quick. You come to 1 Tower 26 workout.
Well, it's humbling, right? And so it's always good to, if it's anything, underplay your performance rather than overplay it.
Yeah, right. You can always move up. Otherwise, keep moving down. Pretty much, we send you to the beach. We'll make you run. Forget about swimming. So we were talking about coaching, me and you, offline, and we thought it'd be a good topic, kind of to to bleed into on this one, what was your thoughts? Where'd you want to go with this coaching decision topic? Am I on the right page with that?
Well, you know, it's a topic I've stayed away from. We touched on this slightly in prior podcasts a few years ago. And I guess for sensitivity issues to the national governing body, even now to Ironman, I've not wanted to tackle the topic, probably because I have some name recognition. But I think we need an overhaul of our coaching system in triathlon in the United States from an educational standpoint. And I know that may hit to the heart of many coaches. So I apologize in advance until we can actually have a one-on-one discussion, because we don't have enough time on air to go through details. But what we really have, Jim, Emily, you guys that are listening, we've had 6 Olympiads now. We add those up, that would be 36 individual medals that have been handed out in triathlon: gold, silver, and bronze, right? 6 times 3, 18. Men and women, 36. And out of 36 medals, and the relays got introduced recently, but let's just do the individual event, Olympic distance triathlon. The United States has 2 medals, right? And one of those 2 medals is a beautiful gold medal with Gwyn Jorgensen, coached by an Australian coach. So what do we have here? We have, so when you just look at facts, and it's difficult to actually, this will hurt feelings. But facts should be non-threatening. Those are the facts. So now you have to back up and ask yourself, well, why is that? Why is this tremendous country with so many incredible athletes, swimmers, bikers, runners? And we have one of those cyclists on with us right now. We have so many incredibly fat, some of the world's best swimmers, and not some, we have many of them. And we have these incredible runners. Why have we not yet done as well in triathlon, meaning medal-wise, 2 out of 36 at the Olympic Games? So you have to back up and ask yourself then, well, what makes athletes perform well? How did Emily get to go to University of Michigan and swim under John Abanicek? Well, you started off probably, Emily, as a kid, and you had a coach. Yes. And you had a coach, and then by the time you got yourself all the way to John Abanicek, how many years of swimming did you have under your belt?
Over 10.
10 years. And you got to John Abanicek, who is a world-renowned swimming coach, right? One of the marquee names in swimming worldwide, multiple Olympic Games that he's coached at and assisted at. John, when you were there in the 90s, John had already been coaching for how long? 20-something years?
Yeah, long time.
And Michigan, top-ranked NC2A collegiate team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tremendous coaching experience. These coaches with tremendous experience are the ones who develop tremendous athletes. So we've had the opportunity to develop tremendous athletes through swimming, through running, through cycling, and we haven't done it yet in triathlon, and we are 6 Olympiads in. So what we really have here, we have to really look internally at our coaching education, the coaching system as to how coaches are mentored, if they're mentored at all. And I really think we have to peel the onion and look at who's coaching the coaches that are providing the education. So whether it's at the national governing body level, whether it's at the Ironman level, or whether it's at these other, and I'm going to use a word here that will perhaps not be taken well, but these other flimsy outfits that provide coaching certificates, of which, in my opinion, I don't know why some of these operations actually provide coaching certificates, but it's a money-making opportunity for some, so I presume that's one of the reasons why. But it's certainly at the 2 largest levels, at Ironman and USA Triathlon, that started with coaching certificates. I think we need to carefully take a close look at what we're doing, the education we're providing, and who is providing that education to coaches that are getting certified. When you can have coaches that are level 2 and level 3, and those are the 3 levels to my understanding at USA Triathlon, am I correct, Jim? You get 3 levels.
1, 2, and 3, right?
and you have coaches up at level 3 that have never coached a squad consistently, we have a problem. We have an inherent problem with that coaching process. When you have coaches that are at level 2 that literally have almost no coaching experience, but they're able to get a certificate, we have a massive problem. So now you put out you put out thousands of coaches into the marketplace. At one point, we had over 4,000 registered coaches in the United States. How is the consumer, the customer, the athlete able to carefully select a coach? Well, that coach gets a tacit stamp of approval from the national governing body that says I'm a level 1 coach, or I'm a level 2 coach, or I'm a level 3 coach. So an athlete says, oh, wow, that's a level 1. That coach went through some form of training, so let me hire that coach. Level 2, oh, maybe more training, more success. Level 3, oh, that's the top, that's the tip of the spear. And we can point, Jim, as you well know, to thousands of coaches who should not have those certificates. If you truly wanted high quality performance coaching, similar to what Emily had at the University of Michigan by John Abanicek, who rose through the ranks, starting at the bottom, spending a lot of time teaching little kids first, and then graduated all the way up to the top of the game. And the example that we use in a prior podcast, Jim, as you know, if Michael Phelps wanted to come coach and he went to his coach, Bob Bowman, and said, hey, Bob, you know, I'm worth $100 million. I got all the money in the world that I need. And I just want to give back to the sport. And I want to start coaching. And Bob will say, hey, Michael, here's a kickboard. Go coach. Go start off with the 7-year-olds. When you teach a couple of girls and boys how to swim, then we'll take you to the 8-year-olds and the 9-year-olds and the 10-year-olds. And a few years later, you might be coaching the senior team. You don't start at the top, but somehow in triathlon, we tend to start at the top.
Yeah, it's a very interesting discussion to have because, I mean, look outside of triathlon, look outside of endurance sport, look at someone like Bill Belichick, since we're on a Banachek and Bowman, let's keep with the B theme. If you look at his life story and you see, oh yeah, he won all these Super Bowls with the Patriots, but then you look back and see the amount of steps he had to take along the way to get to where he was and winning those Super Bowls. He didn't just start there. He had to earn his stripes, and he had to be, water boy. And then, fast forward years, offensive coordinator, then defensive coordinator, then all these different steps along the way that got him to that head coach position. I've had buddies who've been head coaches of junior ice hockey teams for years and years and years, and they're slowly climbing the ranks. Eventually they'll go to the minor leagues and they'll be in the NHL coaching the best of the best in the world. But it just doesn't go from 0 to 100 overnight. You got to go through the steps and build. So it's a deep discussion, and something like this takes a complete overhaul of the system, a complete different way of thinking. If things want to be changed, and we want to win those medals at that level.
Well, you recall somewhat close to when we first met. You've been swimming with me for a couple of years. I decided, well, let me go get a coaching certificate from USA Triathlon. I've been coaching almost 30 years at that point. And I went to a seminar. I paid them their $600 or $700, whatever it was. And I took a 2-day course. And on Monday morning, if I just took the test, I would be a triathlon certified coach. And the issue I had with that to start with is, well, at that time, my son, I think, was 9 or 10. I said, well, I could bring my 9 or 10-year-old son in here. He was smart enough to take that test. He could sit through 2 days of that course. And on Monday morning, my 10-year-old son is a USA Triathlon certified coach. So we have an inherent problem with that process at that time. Now, much of it may have changed since then, but the folks who were actually coaching the courses, you or I wouldn't hire any of them to coach at Tower 26. So we had an inherent problem back then at who's coaching coaches. So the system needs to be reviewed carefully. This is one of the reasons why we have 2 medals out of 36. And you have much smaller countries who are doing outstanding jobs. So I think we need to put a little telescope out and see what others are doing. You don't have to listen to Gerry Rodriguez. Well,
the 4 of us are available for the advisory board. I'll obviously send my assistant to take notes and then tell me about it. But yeah, we can fill in. We can partake in that, and then 4 years we'll be winning gold medals. No big deal.
Oh.
All right, that's good. We got 2 good topics under our belt already. But the big news in triathlon this last week is me racing a local Olympic distance race this Sunday. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Ventura Triathlon. That's the big news in triathlon that everybody's been talking about. No, We would be remiss if we didn't talk about the doping issue that came up last week. Colin Chartier, who won the Dallas PT Open, he won Ironman Mont Tremblant. He got tested back in November, I believe. He got tested and he came up positive for EPO. So they just announced it last week that he is going to be suspended for 3 years. 3 years. I think he admitted to it, so it's not 4-year ban. It's going to be a 3-year ban. And he said he took it out of season. He didn't take it before his win at Dallas PTO, which was worth $100,000, or his Ironman Mont Tremblant win, which was worth like $200. I don't know how much the Mont Tremblant was, but it wasn't $100,000. So he said he did not take it before those races. He was taking it in the off season because he felt bad about himself. But I know we all have thoughts on this. Talansky, who's a former pro cyclist, who I heard cycling had an issue with doping at one time. I think that's all beyond us now. But Talansky, what were your initial thoughts when this news came out?
Hang on one second, Andrew,
Oh,
before you answer it. Jim, what was the athlete caught doing?
He was microdosing EPO. So
Okay.
if you guys want to look up what EPO does, if you're not familiar with it, I'm not going to break it down right now, but it increases your red blood cell count, microdose it. There's a whole history behind taking EPO. So you can look up the history behind that, but he was caught with EPO in his system. Talansky, go.
Yeah, people always, you throw it to the cyclist. I don't know.
I wonder why.
Perpetuating the stereotypes. Yeah, we talked about this last week a little bit, but my initial reaction, I follow the sport of triathlon. I have certain athletes that I'm fans of and I like to see do well. And I had noticed last year when he won that PTO race, like it was kind of a surprise and unknown, and certainly those things can happen. But I was a little surprised, I guess, on my end when I didn't really see his name pop up a whole lot after that. Obviously, you mentioned that he did well at Ironman Mont Tremblant, but just in general, I mean, you think if you can perform in that kind of scenario that you'll just kind of continue an upward trend. And I didn't, from what I saw or the little bit of news I follow, I didn't notice that and had forgotten about his name, frankly, until I saw the news about him testing positive for EPO. And this will be very critical, but to be honest, in this day and age, taking EPO is an IQ test. It's not it's beyond being a doping offense. It's if you are an athlete and you are taking EPO, it is just not beyond being unethical and illegal and all of those things. There's a very black and white test for EPO now. You took it or you didn't. There's no ambiguity. There's no arguments about it. You either did it or you didn't. I mean, this test has been around for quite a while now. If he had taken the time to look at any of that literature, but to be frank, I'm harsh on it, man. I have no tolerance for that crap because there was a time frame in professional cycling when that was the norm. That was the late 90s, early 2000s into maybe the mid 2000s. And there was a very clear reform in time in professional cycling, despite what certain skeptics like to say, where the sport cleaned up a lot. Doesn't mean every person was clean. Doesn't mean people cheated and didn't get caught. But it means that I got to come into a sport where I did not have to make that choice on a team in an environment where I was never faced with it, was never offered to me, was never a thing. And I had the privilege to race clean and to not have to do that. But by doing that, I saw, you can perform at the top level of a sport without making those decisions, right? In this current environment. So I think for somebody like him to disrespect his fellow competitors, to disrespect the sport, to disrespect the work that his competitors put in, the fact that they dedicate their lives to it, I have no sympathy for the story that he put out there publicly. And I was struggling and this and that. You're a professional athlete. Struggling is part of the job. There are sports psychologists available with that, PTO money you want if that's what you need help with. There are great ones. I have zero tolerance for it, man. I know there might have been a time, I don't know the sport of triathlon well enough where maybe that was prevalent in it. But what I do know is that there are ways to win without that. And there are many athletes dedicating their entire lives to it. And the excuses ring hollow. And I don't buy it at all. I mean, I know so many riders at the professional cycling level who've had mental health struggles, who've dealt with all the things he outlined, and not a single one turned to EPO to solve the problems. So I think, he failed the IQ test by taking EPO to begin with. And then the everybody's seen that song and dance before as far as, oh, I did it here. I mean, everybody who followed endurance sports saw it.
At least it wasn't in a burrito, right?
Oh man, I mean, he could have said vanishing twin like Tyler Hamilton. He could have said it was the meat at the taco truck. That one.
Yeah.
There's some great ones. He could have said,
Oh,
Floyd Landis, what did he say? It was like the whiskey. He drank too much whiskey before the Tour de France stage. I mean, that
that was great. The most obvious ever. So Emily, what's your thoughts?
I agree wholeheartedly with Andrew, like just no tolerance. And what's crazy to me is if he didn't test positive in February when he did, like he was planning to race. So he's sorry, but I think he's more sorry he got caught. And maybe, I don't know, maybe in the back of his head, like he was doing it this obviously, because, I think if you're going to take EPO, like you're kind of being a little bit blazing with the rules. Maybe he did it in a way as a way to get out of racing. Like he knew he was going to get caught and there was some like kind of self, kind of sabotage thing going on. I don't know, but he was going to race. So he's sorry, but he's not that sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. That's what the kids say nowadays. Gerry, I know you have thoughts on this. We have spoke in length about it. Where were you at?
Well, let's talk about the outcome for the moment. By doing what he did, it has cast obviously a dark shadow on the sport in general. It brings into question his coaches, brings into question athletes that he trains with, and so on, right? So I think what you're finding here, or at least what I think has happened, is you've seen, or I've seen, an interview or social media. Lionel Sanders put out a social media thing, responds to it the next day. Jan Frodeno put something out. I believe his coach, who's one of the Norwegian athletes. He's not a Norwegian athlete, but he's coached by the Norwegian engine, right? Or was. The coach had to put a statement out. So what's happening is that the dark shadow is these other athletes and coaches are now trying to distance themselves from it. And what you'll find, some of the public will be saying, well, the coaches were supplying this is a normal thing. All the other athletes or some other athletes are doing this. And I don't know that to be the case if doping is a prevalent thing within triathlon. I'm not aware of it, if it is. So it casts a shadow, a doubt, negativity on the sport, which I think is obviously unhealthy. I'm actually, believe it or not, concerned for the athlete. I may be the only one out of the four of us that has concern, and maybe it's closer to my heart because this gentleman, who I do not know, and I've never met, I've never spoken to or corresponded with, is a former swimmer. And swimming, at least in the United States, is a super clean sport. It is a sport that has not had doping in it locally. The Germans doped, there's doping with the Russians and the Chinese, other countries over the years, but it's something we've been able to stay away from in the United States. So I don't know where the motivation came from, because he wouldn't have gotten it from the sport that he originated in. And then obviously these athletes that have come out and given their opinions, no different than Andrew's doing, and Emily and Jim, interested to hear your view. It's harsh. We're all being harsh on him, but I'm hoping that he is emotionally okay, because he's taking a massive flogging from everyone, and I want to make sure that he has a support system to take care of him and help him. Because if you were to take any part of what he said true to word, if it's possible that he really was in a deep, dark place, and I do not know anything about this gentleman emotionally, people who can go into deep, dark holes will go into much deeper and darker holes with public floggings. And yes, he did something that shouldn't be done, but I'm hoping that he's going to be okay and come out of this and move through life and get beyond this and realize he made a big bad mistake, and that be it, and that it doesn't do any more damage to him. So I'm concerned.
Yeah, and you look at, he grew up a swimmer, right? Swimmer, athlete. If you're competing at the pro level, you're a great athlete, right? You can probably run, swim, bike fast. You probably play football. You could probably do all these different things. You're very talented at athletics, right? So he probably grew up his whole life extremely successful, beating people local, mile in junior high. And then he goes into swimming and he's crushing everybody at whatever his event is in high school. And then he goes to college and he's still, the delta's getting smaller, but he's still pretty successful. And then the weaker athletes, quote unquote, weaker athletes are falling by the wayside. And he's still winning. He's still extremely successful. And then he comes out and becomes a professional triathlete. And like I said, to be a professional triathlete, you have to be a darn good athlete. Everybody who's a professional triathlete is fast. Everybody can swim, everything can bike, everybody can run. So where he was typically used to being, king in whatever discipline he was undertaking, all of a sudden it was an even playing field and he was new. So he was at the bottom and he wasn't used to being at the bottom. So it's really a tough decision to make. But if there's any type of doubt in your mind, if you can't check your ego and say, hey, it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 years to get to where these top level performers are, but I have this easy shortcut. You could take this easy shortcut right here and you could be with those guys right away and be right back to where you were in junior high, in high school, in college, and the even playing field with these guys and beating these guys. That's offered to you, and you have a little bit of feeling of, do I want to go through the process or do I just want to be there right away? You have that type of weakness, it could be a call. I mean, who knows? We all could have had that option when we were coming into our pro ranks and said, I'm still trying to get there, right? I'm 45 years old. I'm still trying to get up to the best. But if you have that option to make that, take this little green pill and you can be there right away. There's any weakness in your psyche or weakness in your character, and you say, I could take there and be there right away and make $100,000 the PTO Open. Not saying it's guaranteed, but it could be a very, and that's why you saying, Gerry, after the fact, like, you have to be concerned about where his mind is now, because if he had that type of weakness making that decision, where's he at now with all these people piling on and saying what they're saying about him?
And I recognize that the coaches and the athletes that trained with him and so on, I listened very carefully, and what got me to think about this was I listened to Lionel Sanders' plea, which was, I don't know, Andrew, did you get an opportunity to hear Lionel's comments?
I listened to some of them. I didn't hear the entire thing.
So he put a video out, Emily, you probably saw it. It was extremely powerful, very emotional. You could sum up the 10 or 12 minutes into basically 1 minute, and that is, it's not why we race. We don't race just to win. But it's said with intense emotion. And I think it's something every coach, every parent of an athlete, of a child, or just an athlete, doesn't have to be a child, but every parent, every coach, and every athlete should listen to it. It's a segment of it's extremely powerful, but it's so powerful. And you got to think that Lionel is a name in the sport that many people follow. He's also, he's been around for a few years, so he's a mentor to probably many athletes. And he was this guy's roommate for a period of time while they were training. So this kid probably looks up to Lionel a bit. And with that powerful statement, I just want to make sure that this kid recognizes that the message that Lionel sent out is a message to the sport in general, athletes in general, population of participants in general, and not just specifically at him, because I don't want to see this guy hurt himself, and I'm very concerned. If he was able to go there and feel super down, I want to make sure that he's going to be okay. He made a mistake. People make much worse mistakes, and they get a second chance in life. I'm not saying this guy should have a second chance in sport. He said he's done, but he'll need a second chance in life.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say, did you happen to listen to the interview with the New Zealand runner, Zane Robertson?
I did.
It was on Runners Only.
Would you send
That was, yeah, that was everyone. If you want to listen to someone who he got caught doping, and kind of the same, I don't know, the same type of story, but very hard to listen to. And I do, I want people to be okay. This is one choice in your life. It was a bad choice, but you can learn and move on, and you're still a person. You just made a really bad decision as an athlete. So that is also worth a listen.
And Jim, I have read final comment on this, that, the coach has come out and made whatever statement he made, and there are many people piling on that this is sort of just, it's endemic within the sport, and there are coaches that are doing this, encouraging their athletes, and athletes. I am unaware, and I have not heard of any of that. And from a coaching standpoint, I was talking to my wife about this, and I said, if I were coaching this kid, and for me as a coach, it's 40 years I've been coaching. I have never been around performance enhancing drugs. I have never seen them, taken them. I have no knowledge of even how they work, other than what
You're wrong. Gerry Rodriguez is a performance enhancing drug. You are. I take Gerry Rodriguez daily.
Well, all coaches at a motivational level have some performance enhancing skills. But if I were coaching this gentleman, and you have your coaching methodology, and all of a sudden the athlete starts making tremendous progress, as a coach, my first reaction would be pride filled. It's like, oh wow, this is wonderful. I'm so happy how well he's doing. It would be the last thing in my filter system that he's on some form of enhancement, because I've never gone there in my mind. And I wouldn't even know what to look for. I'd be so happy for him, is where I would start. Now, if it's something completely out of its performance is so incredible, then I may go there. So I'm not yet buying into this. This is systematic within the sport. This coach is involved in it, and the other athletes are involved. I just can't go there yet.
Not yet. Let's hope not. Let's keep it clean. But all right, that being said, let's move on to our workout of the episode. Go to coaching.tower26.com. You get access to this workout. I'm going to have Christoph open it up after we finish recording here. But Gerry, I don't think you or Emily know what the workout is. I think I'm just going to spring it on you right now. We're in our sharpening phase. You should know the workout. You made it. But if you guys want to tag team this, I know Emily did the recording on it. But Gerry, you're the one that designed this workout. What were you guys thinking on this one?
I coached this workout last week. This was
there you go.
Emily put this together for us. So let's just get right down to the main set and trim the rest of it. The phase that we're in right now, getting ready to redo our 1K time trial, our 100 time trial. These are our measuring blocks that we start the season with, and then at this time we redo it to map progress. It's a way to athletes to see how they've improved. It's also a way for us as coaches to measure how we're doing as the coach. So we the workout's sort of the main set has a couple of segments to it, and the first segment is more endurance based, where Jim, I am looking at a different workout than you have on the screen there.
Oh, really? Oh, let me see. What workout are you looking at? Let me see. Hang on a second. I'm bringing it up right now. All right, just hang with me. Oh, there we go. 4x400 progressive. Okay, you start talking about this workout. Let me find it.
Okay, good. So we had 4 swims but approximately 5 minutes in duration, and all we simply did was think of this as this would be similar to running perhaps depending on ability level, a 200 to an 800 to a mile on the track, right? 5-minute efforts, 4 of them, 30, 45 seconds to a minute break, a progressing effort. So start off at 70% effort, and then increase 5% output each time. So 70%, 75%, 80%, 85% by number 4. And then what we wanted to do was take that effort, that 85% effort, and then try to sustain that on the second part of the main set for a shorter distance. So we went down to a set of 100s. Now remember, this is dosed out for our level 1 athletes. So if you were a level 3, which is sort of majority of our athletes that swim with us, or a majority of listeners, level 3, level 4, you would be going perhaps 4 300s or 4 250s on that first set. The second set, now the 85%, the 8 100s, you may only be going 5 of those 100s or 6 of them, but you're sustaining that 85% effort with a much tightened rest period of 10 to 15 seconds. We want to see you at that upper aerobic output and being able to be super consistent on those 100s. After we did that, what I wanted to do, and Emily put this out in the audio file, for this workout was to then get somebody ready to be able to swim super fast. So we had some vertical kicking, because vertical kicking does a couple of things. One, teaches proper body posture, and also gets us, primes us up to be able to swim fast the way we had it outlined. We had 20 seconds of vertical kick, followed immediately by a 25 swim. And we did that we did the 25 swim at 80%. And that effort on the 25 swim stayed at 80%. The vertical kick, though, we started off easy. We did 4 rounds of it. We started off very easy on round 1, and the vertical kick effort, just for the 20 seconds, got a little higher effort on round 2, a higher effort on round 3, a higher effort on round 4, where you were kicking super fast by round 4 and had to continue to maintain that good body posture, not hinging at the hips, no waffling or wobbling of the upper bodies. You really have to have that taut posture. And then you went immediately after the kick. It's only 20 seconds. You go immediately into that 25 swim at 80%. We take a break, and we did that 4 rounds through. And then we added on to that again and came back to 10 seconds only of vertical kick, Jim, immediately. And that was fast. So now you're going at very, very high output immediately into a 25 swim fast. So quick feet, proper taut posture, push off the wall after those 10 seconds, swim fast, rest as much as needed. And we did 4 rounds of that. Did a bunch of recovery, and then we did 100 time trial broken. Swim 100, we broke it up in a swim of 25, rest 5 seconds, swim another 50, rest 10 seconds, and then the last 25. So I wanted to break up how we want them to think about swimming 25. So a kick, vertical kick section with the fast swimming was just a prep, a primer to get you ready to perform and go after it on that 100.
A lot of important components of this one. Remember, go to coaching.tower26.com. I will ask Christoph to open that workout up so you guys can see the detail and all the accoutrement that goes with it, and have some fun with that. And then you can join the subscription program and jump in on the open water skill building phase, which starts really soon. Am I right? Does that start next week? Open water skill building?
Weeks. Yeah.
Couple weeks.
Yeah.
That is where we will, cover all the good stuff, all the fun stuff. So jump in, have some fun, and yeah, let's cover one of our swim video analysis. I actually have 2. I have Cassie and I have Dorfman. Since we just did Dorfman on the live video, let's go over Dorfman on our 2 p.m. call. Let's go over Dorfman again, because you know what to expect here, Gerry. So can we bring up Jonathan on our swim video analysis? Jonathan's one of our swimmers, but he sent me a video that he wanted to look at our stroke on the podcast. So let's bring this up and see what's going on. Remember, jim@tower26.com. You can send it to me there, or you can send it to me on my Facebook personal page. Let me share the screen on this. And this is something new that we're doing, is integrating in. Talansky, don't look too engaged here. If you want to speak up on this video, I know you used to have the same issue. So, all right, can we see that? Everybody good? Can you see that, Gerry?
Yes.
All right, so hang on. I'm going to turn that sound off. All right, so I'm going to slow it down, and we will see what Dorfman is, the first swimmer in this lane here. Let me slow it down. And just with a couple strokes, let's see what's going on. Gerry, you taking notes?
Yep, I'm watching carefully. And
all right, let me bring it back. I probably want to bring it back to right about there. Am I right?
so let's back up a little bit more. Well, freeze right there. Go ahead.
Right there. There you go.
The very first thing to pick up right there is if you go to the feet, and you'll notice his feet are about 3 feet apart, right? So
yeah, major splay in the back end. If you're just listening to the audio version, remember you can go to the YouTube channel, Tower 26 YouTube channel, for this recording to see what we're talking about. But yeah, he's about a 3-foot splay in his legs.
And like we talked about earlier in the episode, taut frame, proper posture is what's needed to be able to reduce drag, right? So your greatest hindrance in swimming, the medium is dense, it's thick, you're impaired significantly, you're punished if you're not swimming in a very narrow funnel. In this case, his funnel just became really wide as he spread his legs out about 3 feet wide or more, perhaps even. So we have to look. So that's a symptom. There he is at that next phase, that next shot, Jim. They're even further apart now. So we're getting super wide. In fact, if you look at that, his legs are spread half the width of the lane. 1 foot toe is almost touching the lane line. The other foot is past the black line, which is the center spot of the lane, black line bottom of the pool. So he is now spread out half width of a lane. I know that lane is probably a little over 6 feet wide, so 3.5 feet ish, 4 feet wide in a spread. So now you have to ask, okay, what's the cause of that? What causes this to happen? So Jim, if you can back up what I picked up, if you can back up a stroke or two, right there, pause. Now let's look at this head position right here. His head is now out of the water. This is not a sighting drill. I think he was just swimming. Is that correct?
Yep, just swimming, right?
Okay, regular swimming. So if you looked at him now, what we're seeing is his head lifted completely out of the water as if he's sighting. You can see the Tower 26 on his cap. Not a great reference for our brand. And Jonathan, unfortunately, we can see both, and this is a frontal view that we're looking at. So from the front, we're actually able to see both of his goggles almost looking towards us. So his entire eyes, nose, and mouth are out of the water, tilted slightly. So what's going to happen here, if you go one more frame forward, if you can. Yeah, so that lifting, and then stop right there. If you notice now his shoulders, his right shoulder and his left shoulder that's beneath the surface of the water, they're almost at a 90-degree angle to the water, probably 80 degrees or so. If you draw a line, a horizontal line across and then a vertical line up to his shoulder, it's almost about 80 degrees. He has such large rotation of the shoulders and that lifting of the head. He's now forced, he's turned his body so much, he's now forced, he has to do something to counterbalance the heavy rotation that he took and the big lifting of the head. So he did that by spreading the legs out. So how do we fix the problem? Well, we don't tell him just get your ankles together because he wouldn't know how to do that because the breathing and the rotation is where the problems are at. So we got to fix his breathing, get him swimming with a snorkel more, keeping his head down more, making more of a head turn rather than a head lift when he's breathing, and then Jonathan has to reduce shoulder rotation. So.
And here's the thing, though, Jonathan has moved up from lane 6 to lane 5 to lane 4 to lane 3. So just watching him swim and watching the speed with which he swims and the consistency he has in his times, he's a strong swimmer, right? He can move when he's asked to move. He knows his paces, he knows his efforts, but it's so beneficial to slow it down and see how he can make further gains by looking at this swim video and having Coach Gerry break it down or Coach Jack or whoever's doing it to see, hey, those legs are splaying. I could add a couple seconds per 100 there. I could fix my head turn, add a couple seconds there. And these little things that you might not see at full speed, we slow it down. And Gerry, amazing job breaking that down. I mean, I think that rotation is it's like he's falling off a cliff.
Yeah, he's going to improve significantly once he fixes this because this is going to get him in a nice, beautiful body line and you'll see Jonathan should see good, massive improvement.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Keep sending those videos in. I got Cassie already lined up for next week, so we'll do that one on the next episode. I'm going to skip over most of the questions. We have questions now, but we're running pretty long. We got into some good discussion on this one, but there was one question. We had a new athlete riding with Coach Andrew on his cycling plan. I'm going to say it off the top of my head. I think her name's Rebecca. She joined and she's coming off an injury. She joined the plan. Should she be doing our virtual cycling workouts at 100% coming back from an injury, or is this something she wants to scale down and do based on feel? How should she approach the workouts?
I think it's in two parts. I mean, first is it depends a little bit on what the exact injury was, but in general, if you're returning from an injury, if you're returning from an illness, if you're returning from a time period where you were not training as consistently as you may have liked to be, it's always going to serve you to taper that effort down. It's never going to serve you to jump back right into 100% at whatever your threshold was or whatever you were able to do before your illness or injury. Over the long term, there's no harm to backing that threshold power down by 10% or even 20% or whatever seems realistic for the amount of time the injury laid you off. And then as you feel good, as you know that injury has healed, as you know you're getting back to full strength, you can ramp it back up to what it once was. But I would definitely recommend backing the efforts down. I mean, the easiest way to do that is you lower your threshold power and then all the efforts will be scaled to that. There's no need to push after an illness or injury. There's no need to rush it. It doesn't matter if you have a race coming up or anything. You always need to give it the time that it's going to take to heal, for you to get better, regardless of what illness or injury it is. Rushing it usually just tends to make things worse. So I'm super happy that you're on the plan. Really glad to hear you're enjoying the workouts. I read the question that Jim forwarded to me, but I would definitely say join us. You can be on all the rides, but please, please do back that threshold power, back the effort down a little bit until you feel like you're coming back to full strength.
Well said, buddy. I couldn't say it better myself. So remember, Jim at tower26.com. Keep sending those questions in. We got plenty of them. They're adding up. So we might just have a show where we answer questions. But Gerry, any idea what we're going to talk about on the next episode?
Not yet. I mean, we have a few things in the hopper that you and I were discussing, but we haven't finalized what it should be.
Our booker Talansky's got guests lined up too. So we'll come out with that. We'll send out an email to the mass list about the next episode. Emily, anything else from you?
No, it was great. Great discussion.
Good stuff. Talansky, you good?
No, I enjoyed it.
There you go.
Always enjoy
If you want to
learning.
take part in those cycling workouts, training.tower26.com. You want to join the swim subscription, coaching.tower26.com. Gerry, final word.
We hit some heavy topics in this episode, and with great sensitivity on this doping thing. And I'm just reviewing. I want some folks to be a little kinder. This gentleman made a mistake. And I'm sure I'm hoping his parents are there giving him support and helping him get through this.
Well said. All right, guys. It's been a good one. A lot of good info, a lot of good discussion. So for Gerry Rodriguez, Emily Cox, Andrew Talansky, this is Jim Linsky, the Tower 26B Racer Podcast. Catch you later, guys.